The situation in Venezuela after the presidential election on July 28 has caught the world's attention. But it is a complex story, and it can be tough for people in other countries to really get what's going on and sort out the facts from the fiction. I will do my best to try to explain what went wrong with the election and talk about the recent human rights violations against the brave folks who took the streets to protest the rigged results. Let me start by sharing a little bit about myself. I am Venezuelan and I come from a very humble family. I grew up in a country that wasn't perfect, but where the principles of democracy were respected. We had the right to speak our minds and complain about the government. The executive, legislative, and judiciary branches were independent. I went to a public university in the 80s and started my career in the 90s, and as things started to go downhill, I was worried about political persecution and about my family's future. So I left the country with my young family, but we stayed closely connected with family and friends back home. And just to clear the air, I'm not some right-wing activist paid by the CIA, as I was told once during a demonstration by a very angry man. I am speaking out because I care about my country and my people. Venezuela used to be rich thanks to its oil production. Things started to go downhill during Chavez's mandate, but deteriorated even further since Nicolás Maduro took power in 2013. His government has been characterized by corruption, curtailed freedom, and human rights violations, leading to a serious humanitarian crisis. To give you an idea, since 2015, almost 8 million Venezuelans have left the country. That is more than 20% of the population. The recent presidential election was a mess, full of irregularities. The National Electoral Council, or CNE, controlled by Maduro's regime, ran a process that was neither transparent nor fair. They banned their key opposition leaders like Maria Corina Machado from running, showing how easily they can manipulate the system to stay in power. Maria Corina Machado is an engineer and a prominent opposition leader who serves as an elected member of the National Assembly from 2011 to 2014. At the end of 2023, a coalition of opposition political parties called the Unitary Platform was built, and they organized the primary election to select their candidate for the next presidential election. 2.2 million voters participated, and Maria Corina was elected with more than 90% of the votes. However, she was disqualified by the CNE through suspicious legal maneuvers. So she nominated a retired academic as her replacement, but that person was also rejected by the CNE at the last minute. Fortunately, somehow the candidacy of Edmundo González Urrutia went under the radar and he was accepted by the CNE. At that point, Maria Corina Machado, as the rightful leader of the opposition, announced that Edmundo González was the official candidate of the Unitarian Platform, and two other opposition parties gave him their support. Edmundo González Urrutia is a retired diplomat and political analyst who years ago served as Venezuela's ambassador to Argentina and Algeria. He and Maria Corina rallied many cities, demonstrating unity and a consistent and persistent commitment to defeat Maduro through a peaceful process. However, the election process was riddled with violations of democratic principles. The CNE manipulated voter rolls, voided the attendance of international electoral observers, restricted media coverage, and intimidated voters, violating the Venezuelan constitution and worsening the crisis. To fight against the expected electoral fraud, the opposition, led by Maria Corina, organized a network of over 500,000 volunteers, organized in thousands of comanditos or little commando units. These volunteers had the critical task of mobilizing voters and protecting the vote at the end of the election day. The opposition also trained more than 90,000 electoral witnesses to monitor every polling station, fighting to ensure a fair process as much as possible. When the CNE deliberately slowed down the process and created multiple obstacles, these volunteers played a crucial role in providing the evidence to expose the regime's dishonest manipulation of the process. Thanks to this strong team and supported by a robust communication and data management infrastructure, The opposition was able to collect and publish electoral tally reports from individual polling stations across the country. According to this data, which is readily available on the web, Edmundo González Urrutia won 67% of the votes, compared to Maduro's, which was only 30%. The massive discrepancy with the official result exposed the fraud. The QR code on the screen will take you to the resultadosconvenezuelan.com. Let me show you how the system works. In the landing page, you will see the result for the whole country, and you can see the states of the whole country. You see how many polling stations and all the states, and then you go down these 24 states for Venezuela. Let's pick one of them. Let's go to Estado Miranda State, and let's see the information there. There you have the information for Miranda State that has a total of 66% or 650,000 votes in a total of almost 3,000 polling stations. And they transmitted were about 2,200. Let's take one of those municipios, Baruta. Here you see that 84% is because Edmundo González is the opposition, and this is a particular place where the opposition always won. But let's go to another one. Let's take one, Zamora, at the bottom. That is an area where in the past Chavez used to win, and you can see here 64% in favor of Edmundo González. Of a total of 180 polling stations, 171 or 90% of them were transmitted. And then you have the parroquias, which is the other entities, and then we drill down to that one. We came in one of the parroquias, Guatire, and then again 67%. And now we can go and this is the total number of transmitted polling stations. And then let's go to one specific center. Let's pick one here that have a couple of tables. Okay, here it is. The Casa Sindical Luis Moreno. Let's drill down, have 2 polling stations, drill down, and then there you go, 65% with a total of 670 votes, which is 2 polling stations with a total of 1,500 voters. But let's go, and this is the best part, because now we are looking at the single polling station. This is one box with all the ballots where we have 500 voters, and then let's go for the report. And here you have the scan report where you can see everything. At the top you have the information of the transmission, the code, which is unique for each one of the polling stations, the time at which one was transmitted, and then you have the result. You have how many people voted by Maduro, is that column there, the third column, with different political parties that represented him or supported him. And then at the bottom we have Edmundo González with only 3 parties, but enough to make him the winner. The total number of votes, 529. But the most important thing is at the bottom, the signatures of the president of the polling station, the secretary, the witness member 1, the witness 1, witness 2, and then the QR code of the system. So this is what is there. Everybody can take a look, and this proof that Edmundo González Urrutia is the elected president of Venezuela. After the CNE announced the fraudulent results, Venezuelans were really enraged, so they took to the streets to protest. I must mention that in the lead-up to the elections, Maduro issued threats of violence to create a climate of fear to force people to vote for him.
Si no quieren que Venezuela caiga en un baño de sangre, en una guerra civil fratricida.
After the elections, the regime responded to protests with brutal repression, including arbitrary arrest and violence against the demonstrators. Local leaders and volunteers from the opposition network are being kidnapped by government forces without any respect to due legal processes. Maduro's regime often blames Venezuela's problems on foreign interference, especially from the United States, claiming that there is an economic war against them. This story resonates with some people who criticize U.S. foreign policy. But in reality, it is the regime's own corruption and mismanagement which have played a huge role in the country's decline. Often, the regime blames the US sanctions for the economic crisis. However, most people don't know that until 2018, the sanctions were targeting just Maduro's loyalists, high-rank officials that were involved in human rights abuses and anti-democratic practices. Only in 2019, the sanctions were extended against PDVSA, freezing their US assets and banning transactions with them. These sanctions unsuccessfully tried to put pressure on Maduro's regime to hold human rights abuses and anti-democratic practices in Venezuela. Interestingly enough, the regime allows other countries like Cuba and China to intervene in strategic political affairs, compromising Venezuelan sovereignty. Thousands of Cuban personnel, including military and security advisors, are deeply involved in Venezuela, controlling critical areas like security operations and economic decisions. China's support includes providing technology for surveillance and internet control, enabling the regime to tighten its grips on the population. This week, the opposition has received reports of Chinese personnel, possibly from CASIC, arriving at the headquarters of the CNE. CASIC is the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation that developed the first China's missile in the 50s and now provides equipment, digital technology, and project management services to oil and gas operators in Venezuela. This raises serious concerns that they might be using their advanced technologies to bypass security protocols in the voting machines, potentially fabricating tally reports to support the fraudulent results announced by the CNE. Now, let me explain how the electronic voting system used in Venezuela works and why it is very suspicious that the regime took so long to release the tallies from each polling station. The most plausible explanation is that they needed time to fabricate false tallies to support the fraudulent results they announced. The information I'm showing here is the should be, and it is provided by the CNE. So you have here the structure of the voting station where you have the identification, then where the people secretly cast their votes electronically. Then they got the receipt and they make sure that the little paper corroborate their choice in the screen. And then they deposit the little paper on the box, and then they have to sign the notebook, as make sure that they don't come twice to do the same. The system is also connected to a fingerprint capture machine, so they can corroborate the identity of the person. So the benefit of this is that they authenticate voters using the fingerprints. They allow voters to make selections on the touch screen. They print the paper ballot so the person can verify that indeed is that. But the information is stored electronically, and the results can be transmitted securely after the polls close. Now let's take a look at the steps that should take place at the end of the day. And everything that is in yellow here are the things that didn't happen. So after they close the polls, the voting station is closed in each machine, the tally scrutination is announced, and then the vote counting and reporting starts. The problem is that they were supposed to print the original tally, showing the total votes and votes per candidate. Then and only then the machine is connected to the network, because until now it was disconnected. And now they transmit the results to the counting center, which is in Caracas. Well, the thing is that they did that fine up to 30% of the tallies, and then all of a sudden they stopped the process. It was really delayed. They claimed that there were some problems, and in reality is that the CNE was somehow delaying the process, because we guess that because they noticed that Edmundo Gonzalez was way above Maduro's, and they didn't want to show that to the people. Well, the important thing is also that the 9 additional tally sheets are printed and distributed to the witnesses and members of the center. And that is what saved the day, because our people who were trained, they knew that they had to go those tallies. They knew that they have to wait until they were signed and corroborated by the other, even by the government witnesses. And by the way, that wasn't an easy task, because in some cases, the regime witnesses, they were trying to force the opposition witnesses to leave without a copy of the tallies, and then they basically had to fight, peacefully but firmly, request to obtain a copy, and that's how they were able to send that information back to the opposition data center. The international community has a crucial role in supporting the Venezuelan people's struggle for democracy. Governments must use all diplomatic means to protect the human rights of protesters and opposition leaders in Venezuela. The Organization of American States must enforce the Democratic Charter and conduct a thorough audit to verify the opposition's claim. Venezuela's crisis is a complex issue involving political repression, human rights abuses, and foreign influence. The opposition's peaceful efforts for the democratic transition need your support. People in free and democratic countries can help by staying informed, spreading the word, and urging their governments to advocate for peaceful change in Venezuela. Please join us in supporting democracy and human rights for the Venezuelan people. Thank you very much.